Let's continue. First language. I had said that there were two basic elements to consider when you try to understand, I guess, any language, but in this case, first language, your first language, my first language of planet Earth. Vocabulary and grammar. Let's look at vocabulary right now. The grammar aspect is a little more interesting, a little bit slightly technical, but grammar is, I think, is much easier after we look at vocabulary. So, signal, right? An excitation only becomes a signal when there's a sender and a receiver, right? Otherwise, you know, famously, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, is there a sound? So underneath all of this is a profound view of life, which we can't talk about right now because it's just too large a topic, but it's the idea. And actually, guess who in the West first proposed the concept of consciousness as a field? William James. Yeah, William James. Consciousness, this is 130 years ago, right? Anyway, signals, sender, receiver. There are basically two kinds of signals. One, these are technical terms, but easy. One is called symbolic signaling. That means that the signal has a meaning. It's given a meaning. The signal, the sound dog, is just consonant and vowel, but we assign it. We symbolically link that with that kind of animal. That's a symbolic signal. Then there's another one called performative signaling. Like to perform. The performative signaling doesn't have a meaning. The signal itself is the meaning. For example, if you experience the color blue, you say, well, what do you mean? Well, I don't mean anything other than the experience that you have, which is a pre-intellectual kind of knowing of something that you experience with the color blue, which is very different than the color red or yellow. Performative signaling is the basic type of vocabulary in first language. Right? So it doesn't have to have a meaning given to it by the intellect. The giggle of a child is infectiously effective in giving you that feeling, not because it's an idea. It's the same thing. From an animal, the cry of pain pierces you right to the heart. So different qualities of light, meaning colors, shapes, patterns, geometrics, they have what we could say an innate meaning, what Bohm had called the implicate order, and that the expression demonstration is the explicate. Explicate. Right, that's some systems theory, quantum stuff. Anyway, understand that in both light and sound, there's a quality of communication, an innate meaning that does not have to be assigned. Here's an example. Let's say that I have a really sad experience, something really grieving. And if I had the talent and I was a musician and I composed a song to try to express, to try to capture that grief. No lyrics. I don't even give it a title. I compose it, and let's say I can play it, and I say, hey, sit down. I want you to, like, what do you feel about this? I didn't say what I think. What do you feel about it? What's it like? And you sit there and you listen to this. There was no idea. He or she just says, just listen. And within a short period of time, you start to have the experience, you start to feel the grieving, the sad, a sad song is really easy to identify, as is a happy song, as is a furious, determined song. What is it? That's just a bunch of tones and pitches and chords and rhythms and beats. It's got no symbolic assigned meaning, and yet you get it. And Today, I'm wearing this shirt, right? So I have a few shirts. We went and asked a few of the ladies on staff, because I trust them better than I trust Christian, what to wear. And, you know, I had 4 different shirts, and they said, oh, this one. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's the direct experience that they have, apparently you have, when you see me in this color shirt. So recognize that as we move into this domain of first language, that we use signals, we use vocabulary, but that vocabulary it's just so well understood. But not because you learned it as an idea, but because you somehow know it intrinsically. So, again, heroes, landmark persons. In the West, a person named Heinrich Louver, this goes back to the 1920s into the 1930s, a PhD graduate of Stanford, an immigrant, went on to be a professor at the University of Chicago, and at this very earliest stage, along with others, became interested in what's going on. You know, what is this commonality of consciousness? So he used 2 interesting overlapping tools to explore this. One was electrical stimulation of the head, brain, the early stuff. Remember, it was only in the 1920s that Berger even identified alpha in his search for the mechanisms of telepathy, right? Kluever used electrical stimulation and mescaline and found that quite regularly and reliably that there would be certain colors experienced in the mind's eye, whether the person's eyes are open or closed. They could see these things. And the colors were also combined with extraordinary geometrics. And he codified and classified over a period of time the fact that, and we still use them today, Kluever's 4 constants, the 4 constants of Kluever. He said, you know, depending on the range and frequency, there are certain colors that are reliable, but there are also these amazing forms. There are like radial spider web. They come. Then you've got hexagons, like checkerboards, but hexagons. Then you've got tunnels and funnels. And he says, and then you've got these spirals. And what you begin to understand is that these are the formative elements, part of the light vision-based vocabulary of first language, that they are meaningful when you experience them. I'm going to make this last point a little succinct, but it's really amazing when you think of, we first started to find out that, oh, there are these frequencies, we can measure them. Wow. And then finding out that, wow, if we assumed a certain state, like calm, close your eyes, we could kind of make those frequencies happen. And these frequencies and these states started to become related to certain colors and certain geometrics, that you could also work with sound to do some kind of similar things. So like, oh, wait a minute, we can actually use this vocabulary in a compositional style that we can coax the brain. And I can tell you, because of neurovisor compositions, that, I mean, frankly, if you want to see emerald green spirals and blue and white tunnels and funnels, I can compose it. Not because I'm such an amazing person, but because there's a very clear discovery process that has taken place basically over, I mean, actively the past 50 years, but easily over the past 100 years, where, wow, not only can we know how to compose music, sound, now with our technology, we can compose with light, And with light and sound, we can actually talk directly to the brain in first language. Next, let's talk about grammar. Thanks.